as I felt Jesus say to me, Susie, like, if I take like all the stuff that you do out of the way, like, do you love me? Like your job out the way, like your friends, your family, like, do you love me? And will you love me in this season?
This morning though, we've got Susie with us. Give us a wave, Susie. Come on.
Oh, it's good to be here.
Yeah, she's excited to be here. That wasn't queued up at all.
It actually wasn't.
Yeah. We're going to be looking at John 21 this morning, aren't we, Susie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is after Jesus' after Jesus' resurrection, and he appears to the disciples on a beach. Now, I am reliably informed that Susie spent some time in Israel last year.
Yeah, I did. So last year, right? Last January, just before the pandemic started, me and a couple of friends we went to Israel, and we spent a bit of time up in the north around like Lake Galilee, which is where this happened. And on the last day, we went to this little beach, and it was called I think it's called Tagba or something like that. And so we went down, and it was the beach where, I mean, of course they don't definitely 100% know, but where they think that like the resurrected Jesus appeared to Peter. And so we walked down. It was raining. It wasn't, you know, when you think Israel, you think it's going to be super hot all the time. Well, it wasn't, guys. It was freezing, and it was really cold. And we hadn't taken, like, we had shorts, and we thought we were going to get a suntan, but it was basically freezing. Anyway, that's a detail you don't need. But we come down, and we're still on the beach, and we had our Bibles open, and we read this passage, John 21, on that beach, and it was honestly probably one of the most significant moments in my life. Just stood there looking out at the beach, and I've been on this sabbatical thing, so I've been off work for quite a few weeks, and I was just about to go back to work, and I knew things would be quite hectic, and we read the passage, and in the passage, I'm sure we'll get onto it in a minute, but Jesus and Peter have this conversation where essentially, like, Jesus is saying, "Do you love me?" to Peter a number of times, and we can get on to like the significance of that if we want to, but I really felt God say to me in that moment, like, I was stood on the beach, and actually, I'm not like a super emotional person, but I felt really, really emotional, just shed a little tear as I felt Jesus say to me, Susie, like, if I take like all the stuff that you do out of the way, like, do you love me? Like your job out the way, like your friends, your family, like, do you love me? And will you love me in this season? And I just found myself saying to him, yes, like, all of that stuff aside, take all of that stuff away. Yeah, I just want to love you. And it was an amazing moment. And I came back last January and told a number of people that story. And then, of course, it was really interesting because just 2 months later, we ended up in a situation where lots of the things I was looking forward to in 2020 just didn't happen. We had to pull loads of events, lots of things we couldn't do, couldn't see young people face to face. And I remember over and over again, Jesus saying that little conversation where he's like, do you love me? All of those things that you love doing, if they're not there, do you still love me? And that's been on my heart so much this year. So when Ben said you're going to be talking about it this morning, I was like, oh, I love this passage. So much going on in there. So that's just a little bit about that.
Nice. Cool. That's I just thought we'd start off with that because it was when I'd emailed you and you went, hey, I was there. I was like, woo.
Yeah, I was there. And also, I'll tell you this, I was like, because I had such a good moment, I thought I need to take a stone from the beach. And so I thought, maybe Jesus had like walked on the beach. And obviously, I'm sure everyone takes stones, so they really weren't the stones. But I've got a couple of stones from that beach in my house as well that I just look at every now and again. I think they're the stones from the beach where Jesus met Peter. So
that's a memento.
Hopefully, I won't get put in prison because that would be awkward. But
yeah, as I say, in this country, you can get told off at least.
Yeah, so don't defray that at home.
Don't take stones off the beach, people. I'm gonna jump in on this. This story is where Jesus appears on the beach. They're out fishing. They end up with a miraculous catch, and then Jesus basically says, "Come and have breakfast with me." And we see Simon Peter dive straight into the water, go, jump in, swim up, and you see them. You sort of have this encounter with Jesus, which is probably not something they expected because this is the first time. This is them kind of going, "Oh wow, okay." And I think when I kind of go through this, it's that thought process that I'm thinking, what was their reaction like that first time? It's a bit like when you kind of have that upper room moment, isn't it, where Jesus kind of just appeared in their midst, and you think, how would you even respond to that? If you're sitting there at home and going, I don't know what it would feel like to encounter Jesus on a beach. I don't know what it would feel like to meet him. Like I guess I want to say to you this morning, you can meet him, and that he wants to meet you and he wants to know you. And the same Jesus that walked on that beach wants to know you, wants to have a relationship with you, wants you to have that kind of come and meet me, have breakfast with me moment. So I just wanted to stick that out there. There is an invitation for each of us.
Just great in terms of what would our response to Jesus be. We've just seen this amazing miracle. Like you're saying, there's just this transaction of this grace. It's almost like this covering over of the denial that Peter's done and everything like that. And what was his response? It was pretty cool. Peter saw Jesus out there, and it says he put on his outer garment and goes into the sea. It's a bit weird, isn't it? If you think, oh, someone's going to go into the water, you'd probably think, oh, take a few layers off because we're about to get soaked. But actually, Peter puts on his outer garment. And what was that about? Like in that culture, that was a sign of like respect and reverence. And I guess we can like relate a little bit, maybe being appropriately dressed for the occasion, that kind of thing. Peter puts on this garment. It's about reverence and worship. In a sense, like you're saying, Ben, the invitation for all of us is actually to turn to Jesus and just kind of recognize who he truly is. And then in the middle of that, there's grace, there's forgiveness, there's restoration, there's let's put everything back in the right place and do life as it's supposed to do. And that's the life of Jesus. It's about that miraculous transaction and relationship. And so yeah, I thought that was just a real good point, Ben, and I just noticed that in the passage. So I thought I'd share it.
I was reading the passage this morning, and it was saying that when they saw Jesus on the beach, like just the excitement they had when they saw Jesus, and then the fact that actually they didn't stop and turn the boat around and go to shore. They were still at sea. They weren't at shore at the time. And like Andy was saying, that the natural reaction was to jump over and swim to Jesus. And it says, I was reading the NIV, and it was saying that actually they were dragging the nets of fish with them. So this miraculous catch that they've had, they're dragging and swimming to shore because they're so excited to see Jesus and spend that time in his presence. And I felt a bit challenged actually reading it because for me to spend time with Jesus in my everyday, I don't have to jump off a boat. I don't have to swim through water. I don't have to drag a net of 153 fish that I've miraculously caught. So it's like, if they're that excited, they're willing to do that. Like, how great is it that I can just spend time with Jesus on my own or in my room or reading the Bible? So that was a thought that hit me. I hadn't really planned it. It just kind of, I saw a lot more detail in it, I think, today that I hadn't really necessarily seen before.
Peter's given a really important job. He's supposed to like feed my sheep, feed my lambs. And I was struck again that the only way Peter can do that is as someone who has failed. He can only be someone who can feed others when he knows just how gracious and kind God has been to him and forgiving him. And that really hits me for all kinds of reasons. One is just because I think, particularly if you're involved in a church and you feel like you want to, serve in some way, you feel that you have to do it out of your strength and out of your abundance. But Peter, he's actually equipped to care for people well because he's a failure. And so I think we often try to cover up the fact that we get stuff wrong, that we fail Jesus. But it seems to me here, Jesus says, no, your failure is actually the way you're going to be able to feed people properly, because you're going to feed them instead of saying you've got to be really good for Jesus to love you. You're going to be obvious and say, no, you've got to be someone who can come with open hands to receive all that God has got for you, because you've got nothing to offer in one sense other than your life, which is a mess. And as you give that to Jesus, then he can then use you and forgive you and help you feed others. So I was really hit by that again. That perhaps links a bit to what Susie was saying at the start. Just, Jesus, you're going to serve, you're going to trust me. You're not in your strength, but in your weakness. And then you can use that to care for others.
Definitely, because I think we've all had those moments, where you do something. None of us are perfect, are we? You think, oh man, I'm messed up. I've just, God's never going to use me because I'm not good enough, or some of you guys at home will feel like that God can never use you because you've done stuff that you're not proud of, and it's just a beautiful thing, because think how Peter must have felt, because it's like he said to Jesus, I'll never deny you, and then like literally he just denies him, and then Jesus dies, and they're friends, and then he's just like, oh my goodness, this situation's happened, and then Jesus appears to him on the beach. And I just love the fact that Jesus cares more about just being with Peter. So it doesn't say like whilst they're eating breakfast, they have this conversation. It says after they'd had breakfast. So they presumably like they're having this chat and they're just hanging out with each other. And for Peter, he must be like, oh man, I've proper like messed this situation up. But yet Jesus just restores him, and this it just speaks so much of like God using people, as you say, in their brokenness. And no matter what you've done, God can use you. But also just how kind Jesus is. He's so kind in this passage to just meet with him. And he cooks for them. He's serving them. Jesus is literally serving his mate who denied him 3 times, who said he wouldn't, his breakfast. That's the first moment of restoration. It's beautiful. I love it. Love it.
I think that's actually a really good place to leave it, Susie, what you've just highlighted there. And again, guys, if you're a notebook, doodle, a journal, there's been some great stuff that's been said there. Fresh perspectives on everything, I feel. So if something's hit you, write it down, tweet it, gram it, do what you need to do.